Good morning. So, Australia's in the midst of a physical inactivity epidemic. For the first time in human evolution, being physically active has become a choice, not a necessity. Physical inactivity is one of the leading causes of all of the chronic diseases that are gripping Australia. So things like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and most cancers. It's actually second only to cigarette smoking for its role in contributing to these conditions. Now, physical activity can be free. There's lots of options for physical activity to suit different people's interests. Most people enjoy it when they do it, yet the majority of Australians are what we consider to be physically inactive, which means they're getting less than 30 minutes a day of moderate physical activity. So that's when you go for a walk at a moderate pace. So when I'm talking about physical activity today, I'm not really talking about getting you from sitting at your desk to standing at your desk. I'm talking about actually going for a walk or anything that's as vigorous or more vigorous than that. So my great challenge as a public health researcher is helping people make better choices so that they choose to incorporate more physical activity into their day. Now, technology offers lots of great options for supporting physical activity. So now we have wearables like Fitbits that are inexpensive. Almost everyone has a smartphone, and smartphones have inbuilt step counters, and also there's a plethora of apps that can support physical activity. Also, people love using online social networks like Facebook and Instagram, and these networks offer great opportunities for giving social support to encourage people to be physically active. So the health and wellness industry have recognised the potential for using technology to support physical activity. However, as a public health researcher, I've noticed that the commercial offerings are tending to preach to the converted. They're really not targeting the people who need help the most. So the relationship between health benefits and physical activity are what we call curvilinear. So basically, yes, the more physical activity you do, the more benefit you get from it. But it's a case of diminishing returns. So if we can help people at this end of the spectrum who are getting very, very little physical activity get just a bit, even 5 or 10 minutes a day, not necessarily even enough to meet guidelines, they get a huge benefit from health benefit from it. Yet if we look at people at the other end of the spectrum, say someone who's getting 90 minutes a day of physical activity, helping them do an extra 10 or 15 minutes doesn't achieve much. So commercial developers tend to focus on people at that end of the spectrum. Those people make the best customers because they're already being active, so they're going to be repeat customers. Chances are they're high socioeconomic status, which means they've got more cash to spend. However, if we look at it from a lens of what's best for society, we need to be focusing at this end of the spectrum. So a lot of my research has focused on designing programs to help people at this end. We've done a lot of work talking to people who are at this end about what they would want in a program and using that to design better programs. So today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the key things that we've learnt from this work. Now, some of these things might seem obvious, but they're actually particularly important if we're trying to reach these hard-to-reach people, so don't underestimate them. So as behaviour change scientists, we understand that people's motivations to behave better vary. One of the common models that we use is called the stages of change model. So this recognises that people tend to fall into 6 groups when it comes to considering making a change to their behaviour. So there's pre-contemplation, so that's where someone's not even thinking about changing. Contemplation, which is where someone's aware that there's a problem, but they're not really committed to doing anything about it. There's preparation, where they're actually planning to make a change. There's action, where they're making the change and trying to form a new habit. There's maintenance, where they've actually changed and sustained it over a period of time. And then, of course, there's relapse, when people fall off the wagon. Now, when we design programs, if we're trying to reach people in these kind of phases who are already making the change, the types of things that motivate them are all the things that we tend to think of. Things like, being active is good for you, it makes you healthy, it makes you stronger, it makes you look fit. However, those kind of motivators don't work if we're trying to reach the people who aren't really ready to change. So if we're trying to reach those people, emotional pulls are a lot more effective. So this is, they might not be willing to change for themselves, but perhaps they will change because they want to be there for their family, or they want to be able to get on the floor and play with their grandchildren. Also, for this group, social pulls are really effective. So, they might not be motivated enough to do an exercise session on their own, but if they've made an arrangement to do it with a friend, that can be enough to tip them into action. We're currently doing a study involving 440 inactive adults where we've randomised them to receive 2 different versions of a physical activity app that we've developed. So one version of the app is focused on self-monitoring features, so tracking physical activity, seeing your progress over time. The other version of the app has the self-monitoring, but it emphasises social features. So users are able to send challenges to their friends, they're able to send and receive messages and virtual gifts, and they also see how they're going in a leaderboard compared with their friends. So the study's still underway, but I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the results. So you can see here that we tracked people at 3 and 9 months after starting the program, and people in both groups have improved. However, the ones that use the social version of the app have improved sizably more, about an hour extra physical activity a week compared with the self-monitoring group. So that's nice evidence that social features really can make a useful difference to people who are physically inactive. Now, I mentioned the leaderboard, and that takes me into the next thing I'd like to talk about, which is the role of competition. So humans are naturally competitive. However, our ability to deal with competition and whether we find it motivating or off-putting depends largely on how confident and competent we are. So lots of fitness apps draw on competition. One example is Strava. So in Strava, it's all about trying to be faster, go further. It emphasises how you're ranking compared with other users. It's all about trying to, beat your personal best. Now, when we've done interviews with inactive people, the results for how much they like competition are really mixed. Some people like the idea of it, but a lot of people tell us that they're worried that they might not measure up. And they tell us that the competition could be embarrassing for them, and then they would probably drop out. So when we design programs for people who are physically inactive, we have to be really careful to strike a balance between the benefits of incorporating competition, but doing it in a way that's not going to emphasise people's performance if they're not doing so well. So here you can see an example of the leaderboard from one of our apps where you can sort it according to people's best day ever, how much they've done in the full week, or how much they've done in the full time they've been using the app. So by doing it in that way, it's emphasising the positive, and it can hide if they've had a bad day where they only got a few thousand steps. So the final thing I'd like to talk to you about is human fallibility. When it comes to physical activity, people, even with great intentions, tend to fall off the wagon, and it's really important that we build things into our program to help bring them back on. So this is a particular issue with technology-based programs. It's notoriously difficult to keep people engaged. There's been a lot of different stats on it, but as a bit of a rule of thumb, they say around half of the health apps people download, they will use once and never open it again. Now, if we're wanting people to use a health program, we need to keep them coming back to it for it to work. It's a little bit safe. Someone's taking medication for, high blood pressure. Even, the best medication in the world will only work if people keep taking it. So we build things into our programs to encourage users to keep coming back. Now, one of the early studies we did, we sent a weekly email, and you can see that we got a spike in logins after the email was sent. So in our more recent work, now that we've shifted to doing more with smartphone apps, there's really great opportunity for using pull techniques through notifications. So we're able to use daily notifications to encourage people to come back, and also social notifications. So, you know, your friend has sent you a gift. And also we can use motivational notifications for people who haven't logged in for a while. Now, the program's still underway at the moment, so we haven't analysed it yet, but we're kind of expecting that the types of, different types of notifications might work better than others. And because people can click through the notification to, it goes directly to the app, at the end of this study, we're going to be able to see which notifications worked the best. We're kind of expecting that perhaps the social notifications will be, and also the ones that are a bit more sort of clickbait. So, you know, we're experimenting with different styles of notification, and, for example, we could say your friend has sent you a challenge, and people don't see which friend sent it and which challenge it is until they click through to the app. So maybe sometime down the track, Dan will have to bring me back and I'll be able to tell you the results of that work. So today I've been sharing with you the tips that we've learned about trying to reach the inactive people. There are so many commercial offerings out there, but unfortunately they don't incorporate the features that the people who are inactive need. So if we're trying to reach the inactive people, we need to look beyond the rational cues and use emotional and social pulls. We need to appeal to their competitive spirit, but do it empathetically, because there's a fine line between it being motivating and off-putting. And also we need to plan for fallibility and build things into our system to bring people back. Now, today's talk has focused on physical activity, but actually a lot of these points are relevant to other things in our behaviour that we might want to change in all sorts of aspects of our lives. So, for example, how we manage our personal finances or how we prioritise to spend our time. Themes like looking beyond the rational motivators, appealing to playful and competitive nature, and expecting failure and planning for it can all help. Thank you.